While Jaguar of late seems more interested in reinventing their own image, something which of course I made an existing video on my thoughts on that concept car, which might not fall quite in the way that you'd think, given how I just spoke about it, but also how I would have reinvented the brand in comparison, this company, a little known brand by the name of TWR that you might have perhaps heard of before, certainly if you're a fan of racing in the 80s and 90s in particular, they have taken a decidedly more old school Jag approach to their new vehicle. And for Jag aficionados, I'm sure you've already seen this one and are probably a fan of it. For me, this is a really strange one because it's one of those cars where every single time I see a crazy build or an aftermarket resta mod kind of idea for it, I always love it, be it Lister, TWR, and yet in its original form, it's a car which never really grabbed me that much. And it is quite obviously the Jaguar XJS, a car which is certainly iconic for the brand, but at least for a good while here in the UK, you couldn't give these away. And even these days, they're not worth anywhere near as much as many other classic iconic Jags. This particular car is called the TWR Supercat, which is a great name, and much like the Lister Le Mans, which has a very similar kind of wide-bodied racing stance to it, this though is of course much more modern. It's technically a brand new car, and this, crucially, is not a resta mod. It's taking that iconic imagery of the XJS and reinventing the car itself to TWR's own modern specifications. So it's got a Jaguar-sourced engine, a proper supercharged, not V8, rather a 5.6 litre V12 with 660 horsepower, and of course performance is going to be bonkers quick on this thing. ABS is optional, it's got adjustable dampers, limited slip diff, a 6-speed manual box, and it weighs barely 1600 kilos, which although is certainly no Lotus rival, it actually kind of is, now that Lotus makes 2.5 ton plus EVs. So ironically, in this day and age, 1600 kilos actually isn't too bad. That's lighter than something like a Nissan GTR or a Mercedes SLR McLaren even. Now for those who are completely unfamiliar with the car and with Tom Walkinshaw Racing, or TWR, these are legendary folks. When it comes to racing in particular, they had a hand in developing many of the iconic cars from especially around the 90s world of racing, and in some cases road cars as well. They had a pivotal role in the Aston Martin DB7, the Renault Clio V6, even Jaguar's own XJ220, both on the road and on the track. Of course they made my favourite version of the XJ220, the XJ220S, which even back in the 90s was quite literally a 225 mile an hour car. And of course even at Le Mans there were various vehicles which bore their mark of excellence, if you will, including probably one of the most notable, which many people seem to forget, the Nissan R390 GT1 car. Now when it comes to this particular vehicle, it was designed by a chap called Kaisel Salim. That's probably a horrific pronunciation, but hey, at least I tried. And another design consultant on the project was none other than a Magnus Walker, certainly a name which many petrolheads will also recognise. When it comes to pricing, to me that's one of the most shockingly reasonable things about this car. This car has a base price of £225,000, and although that is by no means an affordable car, and certainly way more expensive than a standard XJS, if you think about that in comparison to resta mods, reimaginings, and various other cars in this kind of sphere, and even ones which have been around for a bit longer like the Eagle E-Type, well the vast majority of them are nowhere near that kind of price. Even a resto mod modern day classic Mini is like 105 grand, so 225 in comparison for this thing almost seems quite reasonable. That's more like 2000 supercar kind of money. Now with optional extras and various other things you can spec it more like 270, 280,000, but even then that is way more affordable than a lot of other resta mods and reimaginings. So to me that is quite remarkable that you've got a car with not only a 2000 supercar price tag, but with the road presence, doubtless the sound, and with 660 horsepower, 1600 kilos, and a 6-speed manual, probably supercar performance as well. But of course being TWR, which if I recall correctly, this is the same folks, or at least the same brand, who were quite pivotal, let's say, in bringing the XJS in its initial form into becoming what would be the DB7 and ultimately Jaguar's iconic XK. So these folks are very, very important to the history of multiple brands, particularly when it comes to some of their most iconic and beloved, and these days most sought after machines. Going back to the XJS, which is one of their earlier examples of an icon, I think it's a perfect time to do it. And especially given Jaguar's recent rebrand, this is perfect timing for something like this. It is more expensive than the forthcoming Jaguars are proposed to be, but I think the amount of people who would willingly put down this kind of money for this kind of car is probably significantly higher, and those people would be significantly significantly more supportive and vocal of a car like this compared to something like a 130 grand electric modern day reimagined Jaguar. It's a stunning looking car. I'm really glad that they've done this. To me, the only rival which this car really has is the Lister Le Mans, which is quite a similar looking design. Also, of course, has fantastic roots in a Jaguar based kind of legendary brand. I look forward to seeing more of this car, hopefully in action here and there. Doubtless it will be rare anyway. Of course, stick around later on today for another news piece which is discussing a vehicle which was totally out of left field for me, but I'm really glad to see it because it's within the world of Le Mans, hypercars and prototype racing, and in effect from Hyundai, which is not something I would have expected to say. Of course, give me your thoughts on the TWR Supercat. Even the name of this is great. All we need now is for Lister to come out with a Lister Storm 2, and it will be just perfect timing on all of this kind of stuff. That's it for this news piece. I'll see you with more, and for now, thanks for watching.